Happy Sunday, you beautiful people. Welcome to the Jaden Show. I am Jaden Cornelious to be exact, and I have a phenomenal show for you today. I am going to chat with the most amazing lady. She was the 14th Miss World. She was Miss World 1964. She's also an actress of TV and film and theatre. She's an author, she's a singer, and she is ANN Sidney, and I'm talking to her in a minute. But first, let's go and check a little bit of footage of her winning Miss World in 1964.
From the north, from the south, from the east, from the west, 42 beautiful girls have journeyed thousands of miles to be with us in the heart of London tonight to compete for the title Miss World 1964.
Miss United Kingdom.
Miss United Kingdom.
20 years old, ANN Sidney, who measures 36, 24, 36. She has black hair and green eyes, and is a hairstylist. Miss United Kingdom, ANN Sidney.
Miss United Kingdom.
For the first time in this program, tonight we have a camera behind the scenes in the real heart of the business. We're right in amongst the last 16. All of them, of course, wondering whether they're going to be in the last 7. There's hair to check, makeup to attend to, and all the time the pressure of the big occasion upon you. There's big prizes to be won, and a whole new life ahead for the winner. I wonder whether Gary Miller realizes what effort goes into the way these girls look tonight.
39, Miss United Kingdom.
Thank you very much, Peter. Ladies and gentlemen, I always imagined that the Magnificent Seven was a bunch of cowboys, but you live and learn after all. I think we might have a few language difficulties here, but of course I'm very lucky the first lady I have to speak to, Miss United Kingdom, ANN Sidney. And one might call you a homegrown beauty. Where is home, in fact?
My home is in Poole, Dorset, and I've only travelled 100 miles to be here tonight, so it's wonderful.
A lot less than some of the girls.
Yes.
You must have entered quite a few beauty competitions in the time.
I've entered a few, but this is my main one.
What is it like behind the scenes with so many different languages and temperaments? How do you all get on together?
Oh, it's been wonderful. I've had a wonderful week, really marvellous. It's a week I'll never forget.
How about your personal ambitions now?
Well, of course, as everyone else, I'd like to win. If I did win the Miss World 1964, then I'd like to see some of it in 1965.
It could be a very hard working year. Are you prepared to face that?
I think so, yes.
Well, thank you very much,
Thank
Anne.
you. Thank you very much.
1964. Backstage, what were your feelings a year ago?
I was very happy to be among the 7. I was very excited too.
You were so pleased, you never really expected to get there, did you?
No, I never did, no.
But there must be a lot of tension, and there's so much at stake, isn't there?
There is a lot, yes.
There's so much difference between being Miss World and, say, being 6 or 7.
Mm-hmm.
Some people...
But ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to announce them in reverse order. And now a young lady who receives a cheque for £2,500, a screen test by Columbia Pictures, Miss World 1964, Miss United Kingdom.
So it's a home win for our own Miss United Kingdom, Ann Sydney, now Miss World. She has the cloak.
Miss World 1963 hands her crown.
And now the crowning ceremony by the retiring title holder, Carol Joan Crawford, who now places the crown upon the new Miss World, who is Ann Sydney, 20 years old. She's a hairstylist. Now the cue for the photographers to move forward to record the moment of triumph for Ann Sydney, Miss United Kingdom, and now Miss World.
Mr. Alan Fairley presents the trophy. The flunky takes from her the trophy and hands her the sceptre. And now, ladies and gentlemen, let us salute Miss World 1964.
I know you are desperate to meet her, as I am desperate to share her with you, but we are both going to have to be patient for a little while longer because it's time for a Jaden Show commercial break. Well, it is time, kids. Please put your hands together and clap them oh so loud, because I need to hear you in Mexico and Anne needs to hear you in the United States of America. And welcome this week's incredibly beautiful special guest, the amazing Anne Sidney. Oh my goodness, I am in regal company today. Miss World 1964, the amazing Anne Sidney. How are you, lovely lady?
I'm just great, thank you. And thank you for having me on the show.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. If I wasn't wedged between my computer desk and a green screen, I might even bow or genuflect, but I can't.
I'd like to see that.
My computer would go off. It wouldn't be a pretty sight today anyway. How are you doing? Where are you at the moment? You're back in the United States, right?
Yes, I'm in Los Angeles at the moment. I kept a little house over here for many years, way out in Chatsworth. And, I enjoy it. I've enjoyed America very much, my time here. I first came here, in 65, and did the Bob Hope show. I mean, I flew across and suddenly I won the Miss World in November, and Bob Hope obviously saw the tape, and he used to do all those USO tours for the military, and said, would you join me? So literally within 3 weeks, I suddenly found myself on a plane to the United States. And when I got here, of course, I was driven straight to the hotel in Hollywood and then taken across by limousine to Bob's personal house where we all rehearsed. And I thought, oh my God, they're going to send me back because I don't sing like Doris Day. Oh. And so I didn't know the keys of things I sang in, so the pianist got together with me. And look, it was phenomenal. It was just being thrown in the deep end. I'd had some experience, obviously, in show business when I was a kid, because it was something I always wanted to get involved with, although it was a fantasy, really, as a kid. So I ended up doing the Bob Hope show. I went to Korea, Thailand, Vietnam, which nobody likes to talk about now, but it was an amazing experience because we entertained 5,000 troops in places, and took General Westmoreland's private plane to different areas of Vietnam. We also did Bangkok and had dinner with the King and Queen at the palace. All those things that suddenly here I was, a little girl from Bournemouth, the South Coast, and a sleepy sleepy seaside town, who'd been to the Isle of Wight to nowhere else, and suddenly I find myself with Bob Hope entertaining 5,000 troops, all across the Far East. So it was overnight success as such, and like everything, it teaches you a lot because you're working with the top professionals, and they were wonderful to me. He used to call me Ducky. Okay, Ducky, what was the other name he used to call? He had lots of course, he was English himself, or English born. And they took the mickey out of me pretty much all the time, being British. But it was wonderful, so that was an experience. And then when I got back, the International Wool Secretariat, I signed a contract also with them to promote and publicize wool clothes throughout the world. Well, that was another thing. Within a week, I was in Paris. Wow. Chanel, all the best couturiers in the world, and they were making me clothes. I mean, it was a dream come true for a young little girl from Dorset. And I held Dior, maybe, beautiful black gown, and I picked up all these clothes because what we were doing is I had 14 suitcases of clothes from around the world. Wow. So everywhere I went, couturiers would dress me. And I said, look, do me a favor. I know I'm a beauty queen, but I would like to talk because I don't want to just model. Would you let me compare the shows and talk about where I got these clothes from and each couturier house and make it interesting for people, and tell them the stories of how I felt when I walked into these magnificent salons that, did the best clothes in the world. Yeah. It was a great education for me. Plus I was interviewed. So right then from the start, I said, I just don't want to be a beauty queen standing there and not speaking, because you can get locked into that image if you're not careful. Mm-hmm. So I pushed myself and compared shows, and literally I travelled 5 times around the world for them. And that was all first class travel back then. So I wasn't in the real world. I suddenly taken, from a working class kid from Poole in Dorset to a jet set life.
Crazy. I want to take you back to, like, obviously being this little kid in Poole in Dorset, because like, you're in a place that back in the day, like you said, it was a very sleepy seaside town. Beautiful, loved Dorset, and I spent quite a lot of time in the West Country. And I know you're more south, but I spent more time in the West Country. So all that area, south and up the West Coast, gorgeous. How did you get noticed? I mean, what happened before? Because obviously you're not at school, and then you're Miss World 1964. What were you doing as a kid? What was around you musically, artistically, creatively, that kind of got you to actually even entering in, I guess it would be Miss UK, right?
Well, if you think about it, when I grew up, I was born in 1944. The war ended in 1945. So we didn't even have a television until I was 11 years old.
Wow.
So we were very, very sheltered in what was happening in the world. And I do remember, I don't know, I suppose whatever age I was with the Cuban crisis. And, when we got a TV, I mean, the coronation, the Queen's coronation, the neighbour next door allowed people all down the street, because she was the only one on the street that had a TV. And that was black and white, of course, back then. And so we'd all go in and watch the Queen's coronation for 15 minutes, and then the next neighbour would come in and the next neighbour. So I came from a very sheltered, in lots of ways, I think it's wonderful for a child growing up without too much of this internet, too much. It's very disturbing to me sometimes. It makes me anxious too to read all this stuff online. So for me, I was very protected in cotton wool in lots of ways, and my parents were the same. So after I left school, I had sort of attention deficit disorder a little bit at school, which I didn't realize, but of course it showed in my work. And also I was an ice skater. I always wanted to become an ice skater. Of course, there's no living in that particularly. So every day I went from school ice skating at the rink, and I took my bronze and silver medal. And my parents couldn't afford it, getting a private, tuition and everything else. So there was a local beauty contest, and when I left school, my mum couldn't be a hairdresser because there was a fee back in her day to train. So she said, well, we don't want you going to the theatre or show business. It's, crazy. It's not a realistic idea. So we want you to have something to always fall back on. So a friend of my father's put me into a job hairdressing, and that was a 3-year apprenticeship. Well, within the first sort of 3 or 4 months, there was a contest in Bournemouth called the Bournemouth Regatta Queen.
Okay.
Well, the manageress of the salon said, why don't you enter? Be publicity. Bournemouth Gardens are packed with people, and we're just across the street, the hairdressing salon. You'll bring a lot of people in to get their hair done. Wow. So off they sort of, sent me to enter this Miss Bournemouth Regatta Queen, which was held in the Bournemouth Gardens, and everybody was on the deck chairs watching the contest. And the girls were paraded around the begonias and the pretty flower beds, in our gingham dresses, whatever. It's just terribly sweet, really, because it was a
lifetime away, really, isn't it? I mean,
exactly. And so it was judged by what they called a clapometer.
Okay.
You got these stats. Well, the general public always go for the underdog. They always like the sort of girl next door who doesn't look too. Obviously, I had my gingham dress on, and there was the most beautiful blonde in this contest. And I thought, well, there you go. Then I haven't got a chance. And of course, there I was suddenly winning this contest, and she's the runner-up. And so I got my first lesson in how unfair beauty contests were in lots of ways. And they put this sort of, fancy dress crown on me. And then, of course, I got a lot of publicity in the papers, and everybody interviewed me. And suddenly, at the hairdressing salon, they got a bit fed up with it because the mayor's car was picking me up, taking me here, and I'm supposed to be an apprentice, which is sweeping up the floors of the hair and washing down and training to be a hairdresser. So that's how it all first started, which was really a fluke, total fluke. And then you get brochures. Back in those days, the summer seasons were full of beauty contests, Blackpool, Morecambe. or especially up the north, because they were entertainment. And the South Shore baths that I entered the Miss United Kingdom in, I mean, it seated like sort of 3,000, 4,000 people, a massive bath. It's not there anymore. And, you know, it was an open air bath or with the sea water. Anyway, so they held all these big contests up there. And so I decided to, just on a whim, after I finished my 3-year course of hairdressing, that maybe I'd like to try modelling in London or something else. Now I had this skill behind me, so I could fall back on it if I needed to. And so I went up to enter the Miss United Kingdom, and to my shock, I won, which was, in 1964 September. And within 3 months, in November the 12th, I entered the Miss World and I won that. So it was very, very short. It was just, you know, like everything, I just had a lucky patch. I could have been around in the contest for ages because, as we all know, a group of judges may choose one girl one day and the next team of judges the next day choose a blonde or somebody else. Yeah. It's a lot of draw. So really, it was sort of a whirlwind, really, for me. And as I said, from then in November, by December, I was flying to America. First of all, I went to Paris and had all these beautiful clothes. And everywhere I went, they would design clothes for me. So, you know, I became what they called an ambassadress for wool clothes. So it was phenomenal. Looking back, of course, now as I'm at this age, the 60s was such a great time to be successful in, you know, and to be meeting Twiggy, meeting all the famous people of the times.
I know, I've seen a plethora of people that you've met that I'm like, oh my goodness, she's so lucky. I would have loved to have met those. Can I just ask you, when would you say, at what point did you actually kind of go, oh my God, this is happening to me? Because it would have been so fast paced and not having time to really think. At what point did you go, oh my goodness? And how did it hit you?
I think it didn't really hit me until about March. I went across to Australia to promote wool. And of course, a huge percentage of the merino wool, you know, the wool board was from Australia. So Sir William Gunn, who was the head of the wool board in Australia, didn't really like the idea of a beauty queen promoting wool. And they weren't completely sold by me. But when I got there, I got £4 million worth of publicity in a year for the Wool Secretariat. And back then, that was a lot of money.
Even now, it's a fair bit.
By the end of it, you know, as I was leaving Australia to go to New Zealand, we had telegrams in those days. So William Gunn sent me a telegram saying, you know, thank you so much for your work. You know, you did a fantastic job. And that was great for me, you know, to realize that this was a job. You know, I mean, I did a lot of work with the fashion shows. Touring and traveling and, you know, with 14 suitcases, I'd have to steam out the wool saying wool never crease and get everything ready for the models to do the fashion show. So it was work. And so I think when I came back from Australia, because everything was existential, you never knew where your next job was going to come from. You didn't know if you're going to go and open a fete or a function or whatever you were going to do, because the Mecca at that time, well, they do own, obviously, the rights to Miss World. So I was signed to Mecca for the year to whatever contract came up, basically, I had to do. And I didn't complain. Why would I? Because, you know, and of course, they were the organizers and they made all the financial situation. So I didn't really know what was going on 100%, except they told me, be there at such and such a time. And I had only one chaperone, which was when I came back from Bob Hope's show. I had a chaperone for that time, for the tour of America to promote wool. But after that, I was on my own. So I grew up pretty fast, and I don't think I ever really, during that year, came to terms with it. The difficult thing is when the bubble bursts, you know, when the year is over, in the sense that you're last year's model, no matter what. And they wanted me to sign. I was signed with an option for 2 more years. And I said, look, you know, Leslie Langley won this year. And I'm sorry, but I don't want to rain on her parade. It's her year. And I'm last year's model, whichever way you look at it. And I've got to find something else to do. So I went into Rep Theatre in Manchester at £12 a week. And Eric Morley said to me, "You're nuts. You're crazy. You can make so much money again this year. You know, you've been so successful for us." And I said, "Yes, I know, but I'm thinking long term. How am I going to survive? It's going to fall apart at some point because other girls come along." So I said, I have to do this. So they let me out of the contract. And I went and started off in Rep Theatre, which was wonderful that we had Rep Theatre.
And what is that? What was your job?
Well, repertory theatre back then, every single town pretty much had a theatre where the actors, you had to do so many days or weeks on the boards, as they call it.
So you went into acting straight away?
Assistant stage manager or whatever, or basic general dog's body, doing everything. And then you get your equity card. I don't think it's the same then. But we also did plays every week. We learned our trade. We learned on the boards, but I was earning very poor money. But my attitude was, if I don't actually do this, I'm not going to have any skills in something I want to do. And nobody's going to take me serious. I mean, it's hard enough to be taken serious when you're Miss World anyway. So it kept me in work, and it was the right move to make, because I stepped away from what I was doing for that magnificent year, because I could never have repeated a year like that.
How did you feel? Because, I mean, I remember, I had record deals back in the 90s, and then when you lose all that feeling of like, if you're even remotely sensitive, then you're your biggest enemy. You're not good enough. I can't do it again. How did you feel? Because, for me, it was successful and it was fun and I loved it, but it wasn't your level. So how did you deal with that? Or did you just like, right, best foot forward, I'm still doing this, I'm still going to make this happen? How did it affect you emotionally at that time?
Well, big time, I would say, because regardless of anything, it's such an extraordinary thing to happen. And as I say, the bubble bursts in the sense that nobody's taking care of you, or you're not getting first-class travel. You're not getting the limousines, the Daimlers, the beautiful Rolls Royces to pick you up. You're suddenly going into a rep company where nobody really wants to know you. Right. Why does the Miss World have to come and join our company? We're struggling actors. We don't need her here. And they were pretty mean to me for about 3 weeks, and then they decided I wasn't so bad after all and took me to the pub for a pork pie and a beer, But that I think it was a blessing that I came slapped back down to earth in such a was reality. I had to face reality that would never happen to me again in my life. And, it was an extraordinary year. Plus the 60s, you get, the 60s were the time that, to get that sort of publicity. And no, it's difficult. It's difficult because, like everything, every fairy tale, you've always got a dark side to it. And the dark side, obviously, to Miss World is that when the year is over, you're on your own. And you're faced with a real world, and certainly in the acting world, where it's hard to make, it's hard to go into something that's so far away from a beauty queen.
Right.
So the dark side was I had a lot of negativity against me. Understandably.
So how did you, what was your next route of success? So, because obviously you've been a star of theatre, of movies, of TV shows as well. So you're now treading the boards, trying to get for your equity card. What happened next? Where was your next big break?
Well, a friend of mine who actually had grown up locally in Bournemouth also and became a very, very famous entrepreneur, and asked me to do a play called, what was that play I did? I think it was the first one I did. Oh, they asked me to do a musical.
Okay.
Here you go, suddenly singing. So I should have my resume here, I remember. And it was called Lock Up Your Daughters, which was an 18th century sort of romp. And I was to pay the ingenue because I was young then. And I had to sing a song called several songs, and quite a few stars were in it. Anyway, they offered me this role, and of course, really, I was green as God knows green, and so I was thrown in at the deep end, really, Jade, and I can't say anything else than the fact how I survived it was because I'd had so much publicity, I put bums on the seats.
Right.
They all thought, you've seen this world fall over and make a mess of trying to be an actor.
So it wasn't to support and to love and to cherish. It was waiting for that next newsworthy mistake or something. Nice. Well, I love them.
So I kept working, and I went on the road. I toured, and that continued for many, many years. And again, I went back to a lot of the places that I worked, and then I ended up in Vegas. I went to Australia to live for a while and worked there, did television. Then I ended up in Vegas and sang with another girlfriend who's from my hometown, ironically. And she ended up, she'd gone with the Bluebell Girls over to Beirut when it was the most beautiful place when it had the casino there. So yes, it's hard to know. It's sort of, when you're in show business, you never know when your next job is coming or if it's coming. And whatever comes, I kind of took the job, to be honest. I wasn't in the position to say, well, I don't want to do that, because I needed to work and earn a living. So I can't complain at all, because I've continued working. Certainly up until I was, around 60.
Couple of years.
But I really don't want to go on the road again. And also, the world has changed. Yeah. There's no rep theatre to learn there's very little rep theatre, not exactly no rep theatre, but there's very few, or I don't know if there's any at all in England anymore. And so I had a lucky period. That's all I can say. It was, but it wasn't all roses, and it wasn't all laid on a plate for me.
No, it is a scary industry. I mean, it all looks very glamorous, and I'm sure that first year it was kind of roses and everything on a plate, and then you're literally dumped in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. You've got to tread water until you can find something that's, gonna continue your journey. I'm still waiting to become an overnight success after 34 years of singing.
Yeah, but you're doing what you love.
Yeah.
And that counts for a lot. I'm sorry, but that counts for a lot.
No, it really does.
If you're lucky enough to find a career that, you're passionate about, you enjoy, and you can survive doing it, I think it's very special. I don't think you have to be, a huge star to actually enjoy the work. I think we're lucky. We're lucky that we were able to follow that creative work.
I think you probably enjoy it more if you're not a huge star, because there's no expectations of you and what you have to fulfill and what you have to. Obviously, I've spoken to loads of people in these shows after years, and people that are kind of just starting on their creative careers now, and they've said, like offline, they've kind of said, what would you say? What advice would you give? And I would say that it was my biggest expectations were my biggest disappointments. So now I do everything without expectation and just for the love and the blessing of being able to do it. So if it doesn't generate income, or doesn't generate the next move, or doesn't generate a partner, or doesn't generate a newspaper article, it doesn't matter anymore, because I do it because why shouldn't I?
Absolutely, because you love it and you enjoy it, No, I think we're very fortunate, very, very fortunate to follow it, and keep working, and doing what you love.
Absolutely.
I think the difficult thing is, as I say, when you get to a certain age and everything's changed, you're lucky because you can control what you do. You can go out and sing and plan. And I thought about doing sort of some singing, some cabaret, but where is the work? Where do you go? And do I really want to put myself through that anymore?
Yeah.
Having done The Sound of Music, the Julie Andrews role, when I started to sing properly, I got thrown in when I was young from the Miss World to do a record called The Boy in the Woolly Sweater, which was hysterical. Oh my God.
We're going to hear that at the end of the show. I love it.
I was so naive. And so what it was, because they wanted to promote wool clothes, they decided they'd get dummy me, to do this song at Abbey Road, nonetheless, where the Beatles recorded, and so I go in there and sing this song, and it's absolutely dire. But it's so camp, and it's kind of funny. And especially when the man's voice comes in, I'll give you everything except my woolly sweater. I but I was so naive back then. I just thought it was hysterical and fun, and couldn't sing a note really, and certainly the back of don't play the back of the album, the record is bloody awful. Anyway, look, so you just have to laugh at life and all the choices you've made. But when you get to a certain age, you sit back and think, God, I shake my head at some of the things I've done, but I kept working, and that's what's important.
And you've met some of that. I mean, I was a child of the 70s, so I weren't that far behind you really with, like what you were doing. Obviously, I know you from the work that a lot of the work that you've done that I'd seen as a kid as well, but also you'd met like my idols at the time, like your Harry Seacombe. I always said that if I was born 20 years earlier rather, I would have been a huge rival for Val Doonican.
Yes, I actually worked with Val Doonican.
And you've worked with him and Harry Seacombe, and I'm like, oh my goodness, that's amazing.
Yeah, there was a club, I can't remember the name of it up north, but there were a lot of clubs in England. And no, I mean, it was an era where there was a lot of cabaret work and a lot of singers and everything else, because there were clubs. And also, when I sang with Penny, we did Bangkok, the Philippines, all the places we toured. What we did was a lovely hotel, beautiful, like the Thompson, I'm trying to think, the Dusatani in Thailand. And they always had a beautiful room at the top where they had a, maybe 7 or 10 piece, whatever, orchestra, although we had 30-piece orchestrations, which very rarely got played except for the Philippines. And we could sing all those beautiful rooms at the top of these glamorous hotels. And so there's hardly any cabaret dates to make anymore because those rooms are closed, or they're a buffet or whatever. Singapore, I mean, yes, it was. And then I also toured in plays with Leslie Phillips.
Frankie Howard, I saw photos of you and oh, no, stop it, no. Oh, I do love him. They were just legends. Like, you'll never find anyone like that.
It was that era of those loads of comics and, David Jason I work with, I mean, it just goes on because there was a group of people that never stopped working because there was work there. But the times have changed. Now people really don't want to do theatre that are stars and the stars are the ones that put bums on seats and make the producer happy. So they can't afford to put shows on unless they get stars in them, or obviously a musical where the producers have plenty of money to put into the shows. But it's got very difficult to even put plays on because, they cost so much. You've got to figure out how they're amortized out, and the star will only give you 4 weeks or something, and how many shows will they do a week per week. So it's become more difficult. So it's just different times now. So I was extremely lucky to have had the period I had, and I think that's much more to do with sheer luck than talent. It was just I was around at the right time.
I think there's luck involved in it because you was the right place at the right time. But I think the fact that most people probably would have just nosedived after that first year. And during that first year, probably wouldn't have pushed to host and to kind of build a name for themselves. That old saying, you're not just a pretty face. A lot of people would have possibly been just a pretty face and then just gone back to hairdressing after that. But you didn't. You was always pushing yourself forward and doing things. And that's why, this 20 years after, you're still internationally known and you're still doing the things that you're doing. Would you go back, because you was in the Avengers, you were in movies, so how did all they come about?
Well, like everything, it was having an agent, somebody seeing you on something. It's always work gets work.
Right.
You're not working, it's hard to get work.
Right.
But work gets work because somebody sees you and says, we could use her in this. Oh, I don't know, and then you have to most people have to know that you do a good job, that you're on time, you're always there, you're never off sick. I mean, back when I was in the theatre, we couldn't take a sick day. I mean, many a time in a pantomime, for instance, I'd be singing and I'd get a cold, and I literally had no voice, and my understudy would go, into the orchestra pit and sing for me, and I'd on stage because and the audience would know in pantomime that you had a croaky voice and whatever, and then later you'd thank her, you know, and say to the public, you know, when we're curtain call, that I'm so grateful that somebody was singing for me tonight, because they could hear audience, and don't forget pantomime's not taken too seriously.
No,
but we didn't take days off, you know, we just didn't, unless we were so sick that we couldn't get on stage, like throwing up or something. But it was rare, you know, and they had to know you were a hard worker and you were always there on time and did your job. Mm-hmm. So it's a profession where it's a tough profession.
Yeah.
And it's a great shame for a lot of people today, because unless they're in New York or London or the cities that have a lot of theatre, for instance, here in LA, they have what they call a 99-seater theatre where you don't get paid. So you do it for the love of it, because you want to be seen by casting directors or whatever. And that's all very well. And it's good when you're in your 20s. It's not so good when you get older, because you think, do I really want to do it? I've had the experience. So the drive goes. You just change, you know.
Of course, absolutely. Yeah. Do you still have involvement in the Miss World contest and the Miss United Kingdom contests? I
have gone back and judged over in China a couple of times, and also in London. I'm not sure how many times I've done it. But yes, I do and I don't, because it's up to Julia Morley who she chooses. She has a lot to choose from that. I was the 14th Miss World. Wow. You know, now it's been going on a very long time. I'm not sure what they're up to, but it's certainly been going on since it started in, the Festival of Britain, I think in 1953 or something like that. Oh, okay. So, yeah, so she's got a lot of girls to choose from, and, you know, people go across and she'll choose so many people to go and judge with her judges. And it's just a joy to go back and see them and see the younger, lovely women come along, naive, sweet, you know, and just the same, the world doesn't change.
How do you think it, like, because obviously it's a very different generation now, it's a very different world now. You have the woke brigade and you have the feminist movement, and, you know, they all think that being beautiful and being glamorous and being sexy was actually undermining the power of women. Obviously you proved that you could be sexy, glamorous, and still be a bloody hard worker and still be successful as well as any man. But now the things like that are now more frowned upon than they are celebrated and rejoiced at. How does that affect these kind of competitions now, do you think?
Well, it's enormously, because they have to produce them themselves. The BBC and ITV all turned down the contest because, you know, the feminists, and rightly so, things were changing, changed the view of the public. And I don't think we can bring that back. But a myriad of beauty contests all over the world still. And of course, now with the internet, the promotions are now on the internet, but you're not going to stop. I mean, nobody forces a girl to enter a beauty contest. You know, you're not going to stop someone using that channel as such to further whatever it is they imagine they wish to do with their life. So I'm certainly not anti-contests at all, because I know the girls and I meet a lot of the girls today. And so it's sort of a camaraderie, especially in England, of women young women that all promote each other. You know, wow. Some want to be singers, some want to be whatever, and they find this a stepping stone. And for me, it was a stepping stone, but it wasn't one that I expected. And my expectations are getting you all the time, because it just happened overnight, and so therefore I didn't have all the long-term experience of entering contests. But as far as the wokeness is concerned, I think we've gone too far, really. You know, my attitude is live and let live. We're not going to change people. We're not going to stop people entering beauty contests. If they're beautiful, you know,
that's celebrate it. Yeah, absolutely.
Celebrate it.
Absolutely.
So I try not to buy into that too much, because, you know, it was part of my past, and it's negative. And I don't like going into negative spaces that I don't necessarily need to go to.
What do you think would have happened if you just literally had never been kind of browbeaten by your colleagues at the hairdressers to go and do that, you know, at the Bournemouth Winter Gardens, wherever it was? Like, what do you think you would have, like, became, what would you have followed? I mean, obviously you have that passion for creativity and the arts. So, but what do you
I think possibly I would have kept trying and joined a rep company of some kind. Who knows what my future would have been? Maybe I was married and had a couple of children, and there's nothing wrong with that, you know.
No.
But it's very difficult when you are in the theatre and when you tour nightly and work. It's hard to maintain a proper relationship, to be honest. And certainly I always said, I don't want to bring children into the world unless I can spend the first 10 years of their lives with them completely, dedicated to them, because it's just not fair. So I suppose I made that choice, that it wouldn't have been right to tour, travel. It would have been impossible to take a child with you or a baby. It's not right. So you have to be pretty dedicated in a way, and you have to know that you can't mix the two. You've either got to be in theatre and tour. I mean, touring is no fun week to week. It is fun, but it's not good on private relationships or personal.
And it's hard work. It's not all easy.
Absolutely, it's hard work.
No, it reminds me of the story of Agneta from ABBA. That everything was going so well for ABBA, so internationally known, absolutely rocketed after the Eurovision Song Contest, and then all started having troubles because obviously Agneta was probably one of the most known, because she desperately beautiful and still is, great singer. She was probably the most loved. Frida as well, but definitely Agneta, but couldn't deal with having to be away from her baby daughter and being away from being a mom, and so all kind of just started to nosedive straight after that. So I can't. Maybe now it's different. You can drag nannies and that around with you, but probably not the best.
Well, it depends how much money you're earning, of course. If you're very, very famous, of course you can have a nanny, and people would. But I didn't. I mean, I just earned a living in show business. I'm grateful for it. And it just didn't work out for me. It just didn't work out because I took the jobs, and then relationships are hard with men when they don't want you working at night, understandably. And it was the only way I could maintain my independence. And it's a balance, interdependence is a great thing in a relationship, but it's tough on a man. It's tough on a man with a woman that's off gallivanting in a show.
Yeah, I can imagine. What would you have said would have been so far? I mean, obviously, you've been in the entertainment industry for a few years now. Looking back at all that you've done, all that you've achieved, what would you say has probably been one of the highlights of your career, excluding Miss World? Because obviously, I mean, you can't really go any further up than that, really. But of all the things that you've done, what is one of the things that kind of really sticks in your mind? Like, wow, that was just the best.
I love doing a play called Rattle of Simple Man, which was a 3-hander, but really a 2-hander play. That was a challenge, and it was a good time in my career. Just not long after Miss World, which kind of. Gave me some confidence that I actually could take on a role like that. And also The Sound of Music, which I was in. I was actually singing in Vegas at the Jubilee show, and I was offered to do the Julie Andrews role in Denver, and so they very, very kindly let me out of the contract for the time it took to rehearse and go to Denver and play the Julie Andrews role. And that was wonderful because, I had to sing live 8 shows a week on The Sound of Music. It was quite a challenge, especially when you're a mile high. It took me a while to get my breath with everything because of Mile High City, Denver. And so then I went straight back into work at the Jubilee show. And, it's surprising, actually, how kind people have been to me in lots of ways. My bosses, I went to them and said, look, I'm not going to get a role like this very often. Would you possibly let me out, for the time? And could I come back to my job because I've got a mortgage to pay? And they said, I'll talk to the boss higher up and see what we can do. Anyway, very kindly, they let me go, which was, fantastic.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of good people in my life.
Amazing. Did you ever meet Julie Andrews?
No, I didn't.
Because you met everyone else. I was just wondering if you
Oh, there's lots of people I didn't meet. Yeah.
That's amazing. Is there anything that you had done within that time that you kind of was like, oh, I mean, most, flourishing career, really, like effervescent. Is there anything that it was like, oh, that was, I wish I'd said no to that one, to be fair?
Yes. One, Penny and I, this is my girlfriend, her name was Penny France, and we signed together for a couple of years. When I came back from Australia and I was in Vegas, and she said, why don't we put a cabaret together? And I said, oh, you don't know what it's like to go on the road. You don't get the musicians. They can't pay your music. And she just persuaded me anyway. And we were off, so we choreographed and got a really good choreographer in Vegas. And it was a lot of fun. I did enjoy working with her. She was just the most wonderful lady and taught me a lot. But we had this tour to do it on a bus with, a group of musicians, and we were supposed to be doing all of Brigham Young, and I said, universities and everything else, and I said, some Mormons, I said, they're not going to take to us. They're just not going to like us, because we were typically, a Vegas act as such, two glamorous girls. And so, anyway, ended up, we did this first quick tour, and traveled with the groups on the bus. And that was all very interesting. And mostly men, and Penny and I, the only one. Thank goodness for Penny, because she could handle anything. And so that was the one where we eventually had to get our agent to say, no, this is not right for us after about 10 days. So we ended up not doing it. And then they tried to sue us for the rest of the contract.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and we used to call our agent the Barracuda, because any men that came around, she would get rid of them. Because it would break up. Right. We say, look out, the Barracuda's out there, which is our agent. She's checking out everything, and everything's all right. But we had to go to court, and I just remember, this is so silly. They said, well, Miss Sidney was going to see one of her boyfriends. That's why she didn't do the rest of the contract. And the Barracuda case miss said, Miss Sidney doesn't go to see her boyfriends. They come to see her.
Lovely.
I mean, it's just all of it. Sometimes you get these contracts that you wish you'd never signed. Yes.
Yeah. But the stories you've gained from that are amazing.
Let it go, I mean, the one thing about show business, when you look back, Penny had, the girl I worked with, she was from my hometown. She had the most wonderful zany sense of humor, and she taught me to laugh at everything. Amazing. And that's the truth of it. Because if you can keep laughing, you can survive pretty much everything.
Amen. Absolutely. I want to talk about, do you think, because obviously your story is incredible, is there a possible autobiography at some point, do you think?
Well, I have actually written one called Surviving This World, which I was going through a difficult time, and my husband at the time, who's sadly passed away now 6 years ago, but he had 8 years of very bad health, serious bad health. And I became basically a carer. And so I thought, I'll go start raving mad if I don't do something, And so I started just sitting, writing on the computer. And I thought, well, what can I do? What can I write about? What do I know? And so I thought, well, let's just write about what happened to me. And it was not a good time to finish it, because obviously during that last year, while I was, what's for breakfast, what's for lunch, what's for dinner, and I would just escape into writing. A form of escapism, really. And I think I wasn't ready to finish it, because when you go through grief and when you go through really hard times, it's really hard to keep laughing.
Yeah.
And I did, and I was very good at it, but still you've got this, this grief to get over. Yeah. So I'm redoing and re-editing and updating and looking at whether I want to actually put it out there again. I don't know, but I'm going to give it a shot. Yeah, so that's the focus right now.
So what's happening for ANN SIDNEY at the moment is you're rewriting the second half of your autobiography. What else? Are you still acting? Are you still open for acting?
I am occasionally. I'm Screen Actors Guild. I'm still a member of Screen Actors Guild. And, occasionally I don't mind doing background. I'll go and do background if there's sometimes one line here or there, because they have to employ so many Screen Actors Guild people, even, for anything, because they know a lot of us have a hard time working, especially when the pandemic hit and everything like that. And so, and it's not really picked up here since then. We've sort of gone through a lot of changes. So whatever's there, I'm happy to do, and the pay is good, because we're screen actors for screen extras so yes, I don't mind, and I don't mind doing 1 to 5 lines or whatever is available. But I am thinking quite seriously about going back to England at some point.
To live, or to, because that was actually going to be my next question. Do you get back to Blighty much? But you've just said that, to live, or just to go and visit, or?
Well, I was there for the last 20 years because I was with my husband for 20 years. So I really lived in England for 20 years. But because he did plays, he was a theatre producer, because he did plays over here as well, and because obviously, he was towards the end of his career too, and it's like everything, as we age, things have changed. For him it was the same. It's so much harder to put a play on in the West End and so much more expensive. And you don't have the energy when you get older. You don't have the same drive and the same energy. And the world has changed. So, what you did well, everything's on the internet, everything, we're not adept at changing as well as we were when we were younger. Right. So no, I would like to go back home in some ways, because in your mind, it's always, where you're from, isn't it? Your heritage. I see you've got the British flag behind you. Then, regardless of wherever we go in the world, I am an American citizen as well, which I thought a bit of a Sassenach or traitor at the time, but you can maintain your British passport. But because I lived there the last 20 years, I've only been back here now for 3 years, really, in America. So I'm thinking about it. I have this house here, and it's such a big thing to sort of set up and move back to another country. But there's a possibility of that in the future at the moment.
Okay. So, and what else artistically may your future hold, or are you just taking it as it comes now?
I am taking it as it comes. Yeah. I am, yeah. Happy to have had all these experiences and to just live life, in a way where you realize, when you face the loss of someone too, you realize how short life is. Yeah. No matter what you've done in your life, no matter how clever and famous or whatever you've been, it all does come to an end. And as we age, we don't get the same opportunities. So I used to say, just be grateful, always be grateful, because look at what we have done. Even though things aren't quite the same, why should we expect them to be? Again, expectations, isn't it?
Absolutely. And why should that stop us doing what we love?
Exactly. So I would be, I still did pantomime, but even the pantomimes, we had 30-piece orchestras, with Les Dawson's band. We had now it's all, a lot of it is gone to tape music, to synthesized and I forget what they call it now. So my brain is a sieve at the moment. So everything has changed. Okay. It's not that I wouldn't do it, but you have to accept that I was during the times when, the 3,000-seater or 2,000-seater theatres were full. Yeah. And you had live orchestras, and the kids would come and jump up and down with the music because they see it in the orchestra pit. It was such a joy. I'm not saying they're not good now, because the sequence music is just as good from the point of view of the audience. It's just a different era.
Different completely, yeah. Well, so even when I started, I was, going into huge recording studios when they had the reel-to-reel. And you'd get the techies there were cutting the tape to splice it and to stick it with sellotape to add that. And now I was like, I've just written 2 children's books. I've just had 2 children's books published. And now I can, on ChatGPT, if I wanted to, I could get a whole concept of a new book written. I could write a song and use a computerized version of my voice without having to make any effort. But I think the thing that is the most important, I think the thing that will always stand out is authenticity. I think there are some things you cannot replicate, and I think that at the moment is still out.
How do we know now if AI has written it?
No, exactly, you don't.
Or if we've written it?
Absolutely.
And where is the authenticity in giving the idea to artificial intelligence and then reconstructing it probably on a better grammatically or whatever, but it still loses the heart for me.
Yeah, for me too. So yeah, I say, you know, I'm a little bit younger than you, but even for me, it's a different world that I find very difficult to navigate at times. So I completely get that. Well, my lady, I hope you reign for many, many, many years. I'm looking forward for when your autobiography comes out and we get to have another chat on the book read show. That will be super lovely. So, and
that would be wonderful, Jaden.
It would be so cool. And I can't thank you enough for taking time out to spend with me. Maybe I'm going to try and bug you in a couple of years' time. Maybe because I actually sing. I sing quite a bit. And I've gone from singing, I was a pop star in the 90s. Then I started singing classical and opera. And now I sing everything and anything. And I actually, on the occasional Sunday morning, get in the mood for a bit of just a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. So I do sing a little bit of Julie Andrews. So I think that possibly we might have to do a remote duet at some time in the future for a bit of YouTube.
It's a good idea.
That would be.
I haven't sung in quite a while, but you know, I'll do my scales.
That would be lovely. And Sydney, you're wonderful. Thank you so much for being such a beautiful guest on my show. I feel very humbled that you've taken time to spend time with me today. And people at home, you've met her. Obviously, you're completely in love with her. So go and find her on her social media platforms. She's on Facebook. She's on Instagram. She's on X. And she's also on The Jaden Show. So make sure you share this with everyone you know. Please don't forget to subscribe. Please don't forget to like and comment. And I'll keep saying share, share, share. Tell everyone in the world that you've just met Miss World 1964, the amazing Ann Sidney. Thank you so much, lovely. We are in touch. We're going to listen to a bit of your Boy in the Woolly Jumper now.
Woolly Sweater.
Woolly Sweater, that's the one, yeah. We're going to go and listen to that now. Thank you so much. I'll see you soon. Take care, my darling.
Have a good laugh.
See you later. Take care. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. How incredible, how blessed do I feel to spend time with Ann Sidney. And thank you for allowing Ann and I into your private sanctums wherever you've been watching this show. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have enjoyed making it. And I'm pleased you got to meet Ann. Please do not forget to show her some love and follow her on her social media platforms. And while you're at it, come and check me out on mine and make sure you've subscribed to this show, that you've liked it, that you've left a comment and that you share it with all your friends and even your enemies, because I can assure you, once you have shared Miss World 1964 with them, they probably will no longer be your enemies. Hashtag just saying. Thank you so much for joining us. I am going to leave you with the song that I promised, The Boy in the Woolly Sweater by Ann Sidney. Enjoy it. Stay beautiful. And I'll see you next week on The Jaden Show. Take care. Ta-ra for now.
Knit one, purl one, take a tip from me. Boys like girls with femininity. You will find once you begin ready, soon will fall in love. All the boys were there from the neighborhood, but there was one boy there who made me feel so good. He wasn't dressed in style, but I loved the smile of the boy. Together, knit one, purl one, take a tip from me. Boys
now to you and Dell. Part, that is, if you don't mind me saying so, from my woolly sweater, which I rather like.
All together, girls, knit one, purl one, take a dip